Namaste, my dear brothers and sisters. The love and blessings of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo to all of you from Sri Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch. Now, today's session is on the synthesis of medicine. The word synthesis has a dual connotation, one negative, particularly after we got synthetic fabrics. No, synthetic, as if it's some way artificial, some way inferior to what is natural. But then it also has a positive sense, positive in the sense of putting different streams, different streams of knowledge or different type of people together and working out a harmonious entity. So it's in the positive sense that we are looking at synthesis of medicine today. And the cue comes from Sri Aurobindo's The Synthesis of Yoga, which he worked out about 100 years ago. Very powerful synthesis of all the major traditional schools of yoga. And why that synthesis was necessary was because by then, and we can easily understand it because to some extent that persists even now. The necessity for synthesis, which motivated Sri Aurobindo to work out that synthesis, was that the outer form, the techniques, had come to completely subordinate the spirit underlying yoga. And to some extent, that's what has happened in medicine also, partly as a result of excessive specialization. And that's what had happened in yoga also. One school of yoga, like Hatha Yoga, concentrating on the body, and to such an extent that the focus became the various techniques related to the body, like the asanas and pranayamas, and the underlying spirit was forgotten by most people, what the underlying spirit of yoga was. Something similar has happened in medicine, starting as something which enabled a doctor to be a family doctor, look after a family from womb to tomb, act as a gynecologist to deliver the baby, act as a pediatrician to look after the baby, and then continue looking after that individual till that individual was old and the doctor became his geriatrician. So that was the type of connection doctors had with families. But then now, specialization has reached such limits that it is said in jest that soon we'll reach a level where there'll be a different doctor for the right eye and another one for who is specialized in the left eye. Anyway, I'm digressing a little too much, but uh, that is one reason why synthesis is required also in the field of medicine. And then on top of that, why synthesis is necessary is because, fortunately, once again, some of the traditional systems like Ayurveda have started getting noticed. And as we were talking the other day, the patient is at the crossroads, can't decide which way to go towards Ayurveda or towards the modern scientific medicine or allopathy. Now, all this has provided the background, the necessity for a synthesis in the field of medicine, the way it was necessary in the field of yoga, and Sri Aurobindo worked it out and gave us also guidelines in the process on how a synthesis can actually be achieved. So with this background, let me turn to the PowerPoint. The background for the synthesis is that if we look at the history of modern medicine, we find that there's a fairly clear-cut division between what happened in the first half of the 20th century and what happened in the second half. The first half of the 20th century was characterized by spectacular advances in the field of medicine. It was during this period that we discovered the germs that cause disease and the antibiotics and the vaccines which could prevent and treat these diseases. It was during this relatively short period of just about 50 years that insulin and some other hormones were discovered. And the result was that the clinical picture of diabetes and uh, diseases like hypothyroidism that changed dramatically. These diseases could be more or less cured. It was during this period that vitamin deficiencies were identified, the vitamins were identified, and it became possible to take care of some major killers like beriberi and pellagra by just packing the vitamins in a pill and giving them to the patient or the person. You could not only treat, you could also prevent these killers. So the result was that life expectancy in those parts of the world which could benefit the most from these advances increased enormously during the first half of the 20th century, uh, being just about 30, 40 years at the beginning and reaching levels like 70 or 80 years by the second half of the 20th century. All this was very good. And history has been repeated in India. When we became independent, our life expectancy was about 30 years. Today it is around 70. All this is very good, but then man did not become immortal. He started dying of a different set of diseases, such as heart disease, stroke, complications of diabetes, cancer, and so on. And these diseases were not amenable to the type of mathematical approach which had given us those spectacular advances in the first half of the 20th century. That approach was very mathematical. If something like insulin is missing in the body, give insulin or something which works like insulin from outside. If a vitamin is missing in the diet, you give the vitamin. Or if there's something harmful that has entered the body, like the germs, you neutralize that with antibiotics. So it was a mathematical approach. That approach did not work with these new killers like diabetes and heart disease. These were multifactorial diseases to which lifestyle, of which the mental stress was a major accompaniment, that contributed in a big way. So in the second half of the 20th century, there was a very different type of mood that took over modern medicine. While the first half of the 20th century was characterized by euphoria of conquest over so many killers of mankind and a leap in the life expectancy, the second half of the 20th century was a humbling experience. A humbling experience because the previous approach didn't work. The hope that had been raised during the first half that all diseases will be conquered by that type of approach, that hope was not fulfilled. And therefore, the second half of the 20th century was a humbling experience for modern medicine. And as a result, the research minded people started looking for the causes of these diseases and how to address them. The causes were primarily twofold: an unhealthy lifestyle in terms of diet, physical activity, etc., and mental stress. So the search began for healthy lifestyles and good strategies for dealing with mental stress. And both these explorations converged on the discovery of ancient systems like yoga, because yoga combines uh, a superb lifestyle with very potent, infallible prescriptions for lasting mental peace. And that's how yoga got integrated into modern medicine. So that's what happened in the second half. So the result was that by 2020, not only had yoga become an integral part of modern medicine, in fact, we had also started looking beyond yoga. One of the corollaries of this development was the rediscovery of the mind body relationship. How, when we are happy, we are likely to be healthy, and when we are uh, sick, when we are under stress, we are more likely to fall sick. And happiness, relaxation, mental peace not only prevents disease, but also helps us recover from disease more completely. And the uh, result was that the mind body relationship got accepted once more. It had gone into eclipse during the first half of the 20th century because it didn't seem to be necessary. If you give an antibiotic, that works irrespective of the what the patient is thinking. If you give insulin, the blood sugar comes down. You don't have to care for what the patient is thinking. So the patient's mind did not seem to matter. Now it seemed that you could use the powers of the patient's mind to heal the patient's body. And then by 2020, it also came to be realized that it doesn't have to be necessarily the patient's mind influencing the patient's body. The healer's mind or any well wisher's mind could also influence the patient's body. So that again came to be seen as something feasible by maybe a small limited fringe, but all the same, a respectable fringe in modern medicine. So it is against this background that you can see that time is ripe for a synthesis, because modern medicine at least has one thing beautiful about it. It's open to incorporating anything that seems to work, anything that is supported by evidence. And since that type of evidence was collected for ancient systems like yoga and to some extent Ayurveda, we got started getting incorporated into modern medicine. And That's how a sort of a synthesis has already started, and now what is needed is the synthesis on a larger scale, and that is what we shall try to see. So what we need today is not an either or approach, that either the patient has to go to Ayurveda or the patient has to go to modern medicine. What we need is synthesis, because and as we shall see, it is the most happen. Now, taking a cue from the synthesis of yoga by Sri Aurobindo, let's see what is synthesis, what a synthesis is not. Then we can understand better what is a true synthesis. Synthesis is not placing the systems that we want to synthesize or put together side by side. Now, what it would mean in medicine is that in the same hospital, you have a person practicing allopathy, a person practicing Ayurveda, a person who is knowledgeable in yoga, a person who practices homeopathy, a person who practices naturopathy, have uh, all such practitioners within the same hospital uh, complex, and then the patient chooses to go to one of them and say, well, we have providing opportunity for all this, and any one of these doctors can refer the patient to another system, and that's how we have achieved a synthesis. It will be better than having just one system there, but still it is not a true synthesis. Placing them side by side is not a true synthesis. Then what is it? Successive practice of different systems is also not successive, also not a synthesis. For example, a person tries modern scientific medicine, doesn't work. After 5 years, he's uh, disappointed with it, and then he turns to Ayurveda. Maybe this will work. Now, successive practice is also not a synthesis. And in fact, that's what happens quite often. The modern medicine being the system that enjoys a lot of prestige, people have a tendency to turn to it. And only when they are disappointed and find that it uh, even the doctors have given up hope, then they turn to a system like Ayurveda. And that's what they are told when they go to the Ayurvedic practitioner, that you should have come earlier. Uh, Ayurveda can help you prevent disease. It can help you more when if you come at an early stage. You can't come when all hope has been given up and then expect that maybe Ayurveda will work. So successive practice is also not a synthesis. So then if this is not synthesis, what is synthesis? Synthesis is taking into account the central principle of all systems and harmonizing it with the unique features of each. Because although all these systems may be diverse, they have certain central principles. For example, the central principle of all the systems of yoga is to try and work for self improvement, which will eventually lead to self perfection. And self perfection is more or less synonymous with achieving union with the divine. So, that is the central principle of all systems of yoga. And then harmonizing this central principle with the unique features of each. For example, the unique feature of Hatha Yoga is that this self perfection should be in the sphere of the body. So, focusing on the body, emphasizing physical perfection is what is unique about Hatha Yoga. Raja Yoga does the same with the mind. The unique feature of Raja Yoga is to focus on the perfection of the mind. So, self perfection in the mental sphere is the uh, unique feature of Raja Yoga. The central feature of the yoga of the Gita is that yoga can be brought into everyday life. Now, if we harmonize them, then we'll use the unique features of each to the extent that they are suitable, appropriate, and will not in the process forget the central principle underlying all these systems. Something similar can be done also in the field of medicine. Just 1 minute. I think it close the windows. So something similar can be done also in the field of medicine. Now, this central principle of all the systems of medicine is that the body is geared for health, not for disease. Just one. So the central principles of all the systems of medicine are the body is geared primarily for health, not for disease. In fact, most of us are healthy most of the time. And even when a person has a disease, it may be restricted to just one part of the body. The rest of the body is still completely healthy. And even the part that is diseased is sometimes just modifying, according to necessity, some of the normal functions of the body in order to achieve self healing. So the body is, in fact, geared for health, not for disease. Secondly, every system of medicine acknowledges that prevention is better and easier than cure. And every system of medicine believes in self healing. Every system of medicine knows that the most important mechanisms which help us recover from an illness reside within the body. So, in the body disease, the body can heal itself. That is central to all systems of medicine. Now, what these systems of medicine do is to supplement these self healing mechanisms. So, in that sense, what these systems do is that they strengthen, promote, assist, or supplement the natural protective and self healing mechanisms. Natural protective mechanisms like the immune system, which protect us from disease most of the time successfully, and self healing mechanisms, which help us recover from disease. So, these natural protective and self healing mechanisms can be supplemented by a system of medicine by strengthening these mechanisms, by promoting these mechanisms, by helping these mechanisms, by supplementing these mechanisms. So, what we are doing is all systems of medicine do is to place nature and the marvels of nature, which we have inbuilt in our body. And these are the central feature of every system of medicine. And without these, no system of medicine can work. So, in that sense, every pathy is a naturopathy. So, this is something which is common to all systems of medicine. So, the true doctor is, in fact, it is within the body. Now, let's look at the unique features of a few systems of medicine. We'll not go into every system because I do not know enough about homeopathy or naturopathy or other systems of medicine to be able to talk about those. But people like Andrew Weil, who have gone into some of the other systems, have shown that even the other systems can be uh, incorporated in a synthesis of this type. I'll focus on the three systems about which I know something. Modern scientific medicine, generally called allopathy, yoga, and Ayurveda. And we'll see how the unique features of each of these can contribute to a synthesis. So, starting with modern scientific medicine, some of the unique features of modern scientific medicine are the rational approach. Reason may not be the ultimate arbiter of truth. For that, we need to go higher than reason. But all the same, the way man is constituted, reason is not only extremely well developed, it is our most dependable and trustworthy instrument because we generally do not have anything higher than the mind so well developed as to be able to rely upon it all the time. It may come as an intuition, as an insight, as a flash of insight, but all the same, by and large, we feel safer depending upon reason. So, this rational approach is one of the unique features of modern medicine. It's also one of its limitations because then it mistrusts everything that is outside reason, and in that process, rejects also that which may come from a level higher than reason. But all the same, this is one of the unique features of modern scientific medicine, the rational approach. Then, experimentation. It's open to experiment with anything. Uh, its mind is not closed. It doesn't assume that all that was to be known is known. If there's any possibility of generating new knowledge, it's always willing to do an experiment to generate that new knowledge. It doesn't reject anything straight away. Let's try and see if it works. Let's try and see if it is true. So that faith in the experimental process, and designing those experiments in such a way that they are as flawless as possible is one of the features of modern scientific medicine. And because of this rational and experimental approach, it is open to revision. It never has that assumption that all that was to be known is already known. It acknowledges that a lot still remains to be known, and in light of new knowledge, some of our older knowledge might have to be rejected, and therefore it's always open to revision. These are some of the unique features of modern scientific medicine. How about yoga? Some of the unique features of yoga are that it is a way of life. In fact, it's not a system of medicine. It's a way of life based on a certain view of life. Which view of life? The spiritual view of life. The spiritual view of life guides us towards a certain way of life. As we have been discussing, yoga has the techniques for improving the function of the body and the mind, techniques such as asanas, pranayamas, meditation, etc. But then these techniques only perfect the instruments. They improve the performance of the instruments, that is the body and the mind. Yoga is not only about improving the performance of the body and the mind, yoga also has guidance on how to use the body and the mind. And that is what makes it a spiritual discipline, because the guidance it has on how to use the body and the mind is based on a spiritual philosophy. And that's what makes yoga a spiritual discipline. And when we incorporate the guidance provided by yoga for using the body and the mind, bring that guidance into our life, it becomes a way of life. So, yoga is a way of life based on a certain view of life, the spiritual view of life. And that's how it fits an ideal lifestyle into a philosophy of life. A certain view of life, a certain philosophy of life, the spiritual view of life to which it subscribes. And that's how it takes us towards a certain type of lifestyle, and it fits it into that philosophy. And the result is that if this person is physically active, it is because the person is not physically active just to prevent disease or to recover from disease early. The person fits this physical activity into a philosophy of life. The philosophy of life being that we are here with a mission, we are here with a purpose, we are here in the world for spiritual growth, and that spiritual growth is not a burden to be carried. Spiritual growth is something that can be achieved through a life which actually makes life not only meaningful but also more enjoyable. And the result is that the person fits this ideal lifestyle, like being physically active or eating a certain type of food and so on. The person fits it into that philosophy of life, enjoys it, because the person knows that this will make life enjoyable in the true sense of the word, and it will also give me an opportunity to fulfill the purpose of life. So, while living a life which the person starts enjoying, as a byproduct, he also reaps good health. Because for good health, the person has voluntarily and happily adopted a healthy lifestyle. And also, the person has also in the process discovered happiness, which is not dependent on external circumstances. And through this mental peace, because of the mind body relationship, once again, the person becomes healthy. So the person becomes healthy because of both these things, the healthy lifestyle and mental stress getting eliminated and instead getting replaced by peace, joy, and fulfillment. So, although yoga is not a system of medicine, yoga becomes a way of living a healthy life, and also, by the same token, recovering from disease much faster and more completely because of that. So, although it is not a system of medicine, it can be used for the same purpose for which we use different systems of medicine. So, health may not be the goal of yoga, but it is a fringe benefit, a byproduct, all right. Now, Ayurveda. Now, Ayurveda used many elements of yoga, incorporated them into uh, a system of medicine thousands of years ago, exactly the way modern medicine is doing now. So, certain aspects of yoga can be incorporated into any system of medicine. Uh, and The more one incorporates, the better. Because even half-hearted adoption of some yogic techniques seems to work. But then, if so much can be achieved by a half-hearted incorporation of yoga, half-hearted inclusion of certain aspects of yoga torn out of context, then one can imagine how much more can be achieved if one were to incorporate yoga in its most comprehensive way into a system of medicine. So, anyway, let's now look at what are the unique features of Ayurveda which can be used in a synthesis. The unique features of Ayurveda are that it takes into account the totality of the being, not just the body and the mind, but also the soul. Another important feature of Ayurveda is that it has a coherent underlying philosophy. Its language may be different. We may not fully understand that language. We don't even know what the proponents of Ayurveda meant when they used that language a few thousand years ago, several thousand years ago. In fact, it's at least 5,000 years ago. If the Vedas are at least 5,000 years ago, so is Ayurveda, because Ayurveda is one of the Upavedas of the Atharva Veda. It has a coherent underlying philosophy, but because of its antiquity, we do not understand that language fully. But all the same, it is internally consistent. There's an internal consistency within that philosophy, whether it is talking about the three doshas of the person, or the dominance of doshas during different seasons, or the dominance of doshas during different times of the day, or the dominant of doshas in different age groups during as we grow older. Now, all that, and or the dosha pacifying effects or dosha aggravating effects of certain foods. Now, all this fits into a certain coherent philosophy, because one does find that dominance of certain dosha makes a person more vulnerable to certain types of diseases. Those diseases are more likely to aggravate when the season also has dominance of that dosha. These diseases can be further aggravated by taking a diet which aggravates that type of dosha. And in contrast, those diseases tend to become milder or disappear when the season changes and that dominance of that dosha is gone. And by taking a diet which pacifies the dominant dosha, which increases the susceptibility to that disease. So it has a coherent underlying philosophy which works, which can be used in a rational manner for treating disease. Another unique feature of Ayurveda is that it has an individualized approach to each person. Each person is different. Three basic doshas give us seven different types of prakriti. So, broadly speaking, seven different types of individuals in terms of physical constitution. How seven? Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, three basic doshas. So, from that, we get another three: Vata, Pitta, Pitta, Kapha, and Vata, Kapha. And so that becomes six. And the seventh prakriti, Samadosha prakriti, in which Vata, Pitta, and Kapha are equally, more or less, dominant, balanced. Samadosha prakriti. Seven types of individuals, broadly speaking, in terms of physical constitution. But then it also acknowledges a psychological constitution in terms of the dominance of sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattva, the principle of knowledge and harmony; rajas, the principle of ambition, desire, passion, and activity; and uh, tamas, the principle of uh, ignorance and inertia. So, the delusion resulting from ignorance and the laziness resulting from inertia. That can be the dominant dosha, that is tamas; rajas, desire, passion, and activity, that can be the dominant one; or sattva, knowledge and harmony. So, any of these can be the dominant dosha in an individual. And of course, we do have, in fact, a mixture of all the three in every individual. It's just the dominant dosha, dominant guna that differs. So, individuals are different, both in terms of physical constitution, in terms of the three doshas, and psychologically different in terms of the dominance of the three gunas. So, for each individual, the susceptibility to disease is different, and the treatment also can be individualized. Other important features of Ayurveda, unique features, are that time and place may influence health and disease. So, treatment also accordingly should be modified by according to time and place, which season, what treatment to be taken, which time of the day, which foods can be taken, should be taken during a certain time of the day, but not during another time of the day, and so on. So, time and place may influence health and disease. And treatment includes lifestyle modification, that is, taking care of physical activity, diet, smoking, drinking, sleep, etc. Psychosocial intervention, that is, counseling, uh, and all that. And spiritual practices like prayer, mantras, and any other type of spiritual practices, apart from, of course, bringing spirituality into everyday life, because that is what can work more than any specific spiritual techniques or practices. And drugs. So, unlike popular perception that Ayurveda is about a certain type of drugs, uh, it has a lot more in its treatment than just drugs. So, having seen the features that are central to all systems of medicine, primarily that no system of medicine can ignore nature, the protective and self healing mechanisms built into our body by nature. No system of medicine ignores those. And the unique features of at least three uh, types of approaches to health and disease: modern scientific medicine, yoga, and Ayurveda. Let's see how we can work out a synthesis so that the central principle is kept intact, that is, overall dependence, and using as much as possible the protective and uh, curative self healing mechanisms of the body, the natural mechanisms built into the body, and supplementing these mechanisms with the unique features of each system of medicine. Now, this type of synthesis can be worked out by looking at these different systems of medicine with a critical but unbiased eye. So, critical but unbiased and sympathetic look at the systems that we wish to include in the synthesis. Certainly, we should be critical, uh, because we might have to accept certain features and reject certain features of these different systems. But this should be unbiased, and we should be sympathetic. Sri Aurobindo says, that a critic can be both a sympathetic critic and a hostile critic. So we have to be sympathetic critics, unbiased critics. And we can be unbiased only if we know something about the systems that we are trying to incorporate. So know something about them so that we don't go by our prejudice, we go by knowledge. We are an informed critic. So become a critical, informed, and sympathetic critic. And with that approach, look at the different systems that we want to incorporate in the synthesis. That's how a synthesis can be worked out. In other words, we have to understand the systems that we want to incorporate, and the extent to which we want to incorporate them can also be decided if we understand the systems. And if we have any prejudice for or against a system, we should get rid of those prejudices. In other words, if we accept something from a system, it should be because we understand, and we reject also because we understand. Sri Aurobindo has said that successive assimilation into a synthesis depends on mastery. So our rejection too must be an intelligent rejection. We must reject because we've understood, not because we have failed to understand. Just because we fail to understand something, because we don't take sufficient interest in it, we don't give enough time to it, and then we say that, well, uh, I have decided to reject it, that would not be fair. That would not be an intelligent rejection. An intelligent rejection is what is absolutely necessary for a successful assimilation. And for that, what we need is not just a perfunctory look and then saying, I have failed to understand, but in fact, an understanding which borders on mastery. Successful assimilation depends on mastery, Our rejection too must be an intelligent rejection. We must reject because we've understood, not because we have failed to understand. Now, let's see what is the contribution in view of the unique features of different systems that we have seen. What is the contribution that different systems of medicine can make to a synthesis? Let's see what contribution modern medicine can make to the synthesis. Modern medicine will give to the synthesis an unprecedented understanding of the mechanisms of health and disease. Ayurveda also understood the mechanisms of health and disease, and it might be talking about those mechanisms in a language which is quite different from the language in which modern medicine talks about it. And that language we may not fully understand today, but all the same, the fact is that in the language which we understand today, modern medicine gives us an unprecedented understanding of the mechanisms of health and disease, the depth to which and the detail in which we understand mechanisms of health and disease today in terms of modern science is something which is not matched by the understanding of these mechanisms in Ayurveda. We can take some cues from them, but both because of the antiquity of the language and maybe because that type of depth and detail was not gone into those days, modern medicine can certainly contribute to any synthesis by providing us an unprecedented understanding of the mechanisms of health and disease. Then modern medicine helps us take a peep into the body, the various imaging techniques that we have, uh, starting with the, of course, the now primitive X-rays, but going to the CT scans and the MRI scans and the PET scans and so on. Uh, we have now a remarkable ability to peep into the body and see what is actually happening inside, both in terms of structure and function, because techniques like the fMRI give us not only a view of the structure within, but also of the function within. Then we have amazing scientifically tested interventions. So there are various interventions which have been tested and evidence collected about their efficacy, and many of them can do wonders. The speed with which one can bring down the body temperature or get rid of a headache. It may not go to the root cause of the headache, that is mental stress, but certainly sometimes, uh, if I have a headache and I have to speak to you after 15 minutes, uh, I can't depend upon a holistic approach which will take a few weeks to work to give me that mental peace. It has to be something which would work within minutes. And for that, I have something available in modern medicine, not in uh, one of the ancient systems. So, amazing scientifically tested interventions. So, all the depth and detail in which we understand the mechanisms of the body, can look into the body both through imaging techniques and biochemical tests and various scientifically tested interventions which we have, which enable us to uh, sometimes achieve quick results and to perform complex surgery under anesthesia. All this is possible in modern medicine. These are the contributions which modern medicine can make to any synthesis. What will yoga give us? Yoga will give us a healthy lifestyle. Now, one might say that is simple. We don't need yoga for it. All we have to tell the patient is eat this, don't eat that, stop smoking and drinking if you do, and sleep early, go to bed early, get up early, and you should have this much of sleep, and don't worry about anything. The lifestyle advice is over. But the person also needs reasons for adopting the lifestyle. And if the reason is only fear of disease and death, then the person does something because he has to, not because he wants to. But when you fit this healthy lifestyle within a philosophy of life, the person adopts this healthy lifestyle because he wants to do it. He finds that the new healthy lifestyle is, in fact, more enjoyable, which provided some short fix to which he had got addicted. is enjoying a new type of lifestyle, a new type of way of looking at life, a new way of living, a new way of, not just a new way of living, but a new view of living. So that gives the person reasons for adopting the lifestyle. And the result is that this healthy lifestyle does not give him any mental stress. So otherwise, what can happen is if the person does it purely out of fear of disease or to live a little longer, then the person may be eating fruits and vegetables, but the person is actually thinking of omelets and cutlets. Now, the stress resulting from missing the omelets and cutlets can more than neutralize the benefit of eating fruits and vegetables. So, if the person has a reason for adopting the lifestyle, and that is a reason which makes him enjoy the new lifestyle, then that stress is not there. This new healthy lifestyle is accompanied by a joy. The person enjoys it more than the alternative. So, yoga gives us not only a healthy lifestyle, but also good reasons for adopting the lifestyle. Yoga will also help the person think positively. Now, what is positive thinking? Positive thinking is seeing something positive in a situation, even in a stressful situation. Now, there are some stressful situations in which no matter how hard we try, there's no easy way of seeing anything positive. There's no reason we can find for thinking positively. But even in those situations, yoga has always a solution, because in spiritual terms, every situation, no matter how negative, has at least one thing positive about it. And that positive thing is that all happenings in life are an opportunity for spiritual growth. That is one positive feature, that all things that happen to us in life, whether they are pleasant or unpleasant, whether we view them as fortune or as misfortune, every happening in life has at least this one positive feature. It is an opportunity for spiritual growth, which is also the purpose of life. So, therefore, the positive thinking that we can achieve through yoga is infallible, because it works in all situations, because at least one positive feature is always there. That doesn't mean that yoga or spirituality exclude rationality. They include rationality because reason is also a faculty that has been given to us by the divine. Our intellect is also a manifestation of the divine, a partial and limited manifestation, a defective manifestation, but all the same a manifestation of the divine. And therefore, not only can the intellect also be incorporated in this larger view, because it is not something alien from the divine. In fact, the intellect can be also transformed in a direction that it becomes less imperfect. It may be imperfect, but it can move towards perfection. It is perfectible, although it is not perfect. And therefore, one can think positively both through a more refined rationality, as well as by going beyond reason and looking upon all happenings in life as an opportunity for spiritual growth. So that's how yoga can give us uh, a rationale, if one may say so, for positive thinking in all situations. And certainly that will help the person be at peace and be healthier. So, yoga can give us a healthy lifestyle, reasons for adopting the healthy lifestyle, and positive thinking in all situations, thereby adding to our mental peace. And that's how it also gives us happiness that is independent of external events and circumstances, because no matter what those events are, no matter what the circumstances are, they are all the conditions that we have been given, the environment that we have been given for spiritual growth. So that also comes to us from the divine as a gift. Fortune as well as misfortune both are a gift from the divine, and we get them because we need both. If all were going well with life, we'll get so absorbed in it that we'll forget the true purpose of life. If everything went wrong with life, we'll be so dejected and disappointed that we'll feel like committing suicide. What keeps us going is the fact that we have both joy and sorrow mixed in life, and both can be used for spiritual growth. Fortune can be used for spiritual growth by accepting it with a sense of gratitude and by willingly and happily sharing what we get in excess as a result of this fortune with those who need it. So we can share our uh, bounty, share what we get in excess as a result of this fortune, be that excess in terms of wealth or knowledge or the capacity to work or time. Having time is also a type of wealth. Having extra time on one's hands is also a type of wealth. We'll be willing to give it to someone who needs it with an expression of love. So that would be using good fortune for spiritual growth. And we can use also misfortune by accepting it as something that has come to us from the divine because it can be used as an opportunity for spiritual growth. And further, this misfortune also leads to a greater interrelatedness. We learn to depend upon others for going through difficult times, and this improves our interrelatedness, makes us feel more related to others, and may become also more willing to help others when they are going through a difficult phase of life. So it encourages a sense of oneness, which is central to the spiritual worldview. So yoga gives us happiness that is independent of external events and circumstances. What will Ayurveda give us in this type of a synthesis? Ayurveda would give us a rationale for individualizing the treatment. This is something which is important because individuals are different, and unless we take those characteristics of the individual, those peculiarities of the individual into account, our treatment will not work so well. So Ayurveda gives us the rationale for individualizing treatment, both in terms of the physical constitution of the individual, in terms of the doshas, and the psychological constitution of the individual in terms of the gunas. Ayurveda also gives us the rationale for making the treatment appropriate to time and place. And Ayurveda encourages us to adopt a holistic approach, which means take into account the whole human being, which includes not just the mind having these two aspects, feeling and thinking, but also what is behind the surface, what is behind the body and the mind, and that is the soul. And not just the soul as an inert entity, but soul as a dynamic entity. Soul as something which has a dynamic aspect, the psychic being, which can participate in day to day life by providing us the right guidance, by giving us knowledge which is not accessible to reason. And as an entity, the psychic being is also an entity that can help us exceed ourselves, exceed the limitations of the ordinary limitations of the body and the mind. So these are all the different functions of this psychic being, which is the dynamic aspect of our divine essence or the soul. What else can Ayurveda give us to this type of a synthesis? It can give us, in the terms of drugs, several time tested drug formulations. Now, all these drugs might not have been tested by what is now considered the gold standard, that is the double blind randomized controlled trial. But then, looking at the different variables that Ayurveda takes into account, if we were to study the efficacy of these formulations in terms of each of those variables, the prakriti of the person, the season, and the time and place, and also leave scope for an, a modification of the treatment midway through the treatment. Now, if we take into account all this, which is a part of Ayurveda, and try to test all these, the importance of all these, and then each formulation having sometimes 20 or 30 different components, and trying to see the contribution of each component using the reductionist approach of modern science, if we try to test this, then just testing one formulation can be more than a lifetime's job for a whole team of scientists. And therefore, when we say that all these drugs, Ayurvedic drugs, should now be tested through double-blind randomized controlled trials, we're talking of something completely impractical, and also ignoring the fact that these formulations, on one hand, have very few side effects. It's not that they don't have side effects. They can have side effects. And for that, especially a large number of them are such that they should be used only under the guidance of an expert, only on they're not all non-prescription drugs. Hmm. In Ayurveda also, there are certain drugs which are preferably taken only on through a prescription from a qualified person. So they have fewer side effects, but they do have side effects. But all the same, the fact is that these time-tested drug formulations have stood the test of time. Not only they have stood the test of time as drugs, but they also got incorporated into our culinary practices. Which spices to take, which spices to take in which season, the intake of which spices to increase or decrease in a particular disease. All these have been handed down to us from Ayurveda in the form of the grandmother's prescriptions. So we have several time tested, not just drug formulations, but also combinations of different herbs and spices which work. And therefore, to reject them just because they have not been tested through a randomized controlled trial would be foolhardy. Uh, it would be rejecting something which works and is totally harmless without any side effects. And that is something which would be not really very prudent. So, Ayurveda can give us several such time tested drug formulations. So, we have seen the central features of all systems of medicine, that is, uh, dependence more on the protective and curative powers built into the body by nature more than anything else. That is the central feature of all systems of medicine. And then the peculiar or unique contributions which each system can make, uh, especially modern scientific medicine, yoga, and Ayurveda, what contribution they can make to the synthesis. Now, having seen that, when should that synthesis be done? Has the time for the synthesis really arrived? In fact, the time has arrived. The time for that synthesis is now. Why? Because modern medicine has once again accepted the mind body relationship, which is a part of any holistic system like Ayurveda. And yoga also looks upon the mind body as a continuum, as something which, in fact, is one with the divine essence of the soul. The body and the mind are just two manifestations of that same consciousness, which is represented in the individual as the soul. And the body is the gross manifestation, mind is a subtle manifestation, but both are manifestations of the same consciousness. And therefore, look and spiritual has once again started accepting it, not only because it works in health and disease, not only because stress increases the vulnerability to many diseases of the modern civilization, and mental peace helps prevent and treat those diseases, not only because of that, but because of another major development in modern science, and that is the entire field that we call psychoneuroimmunology. Psycho, the mind, neuro, the nervous system, immunology, the defense system of the body, the immune system. So the mind can influence through the nervous system and also, of course, through the endocrine system, the protective mechanisms of the body in the immune system. So psychoneuroimmunology is now a well-established scientific discipline, and that has helped place the mind-body relationship on a scientific footing. So modern medicine accepts this mind-body relationship, which is central to holistic systems such as yoga and Ayurveda. Modern medicine has also realized the importance of self-healing. It forgotten, but all the same, now it has come back with a vengeance. This realization that even when we give an antibiotic, it only helps control the population of germs, makes the germ population more manageable, but the very last germ will be eliminated eventually by the immune system of the body. So the importance of self-healing has been realized also by modern medicine. And again, in fields such as cardiology, people like Dane Ornish, they have worked out they have, through their studies, brought about a paradigm shift in modern medicine. They've shown that Dean Ornish has shown that not only can you uh, help a person with coronary artery disease through yoga, looking at yoga in a comprehensive manner, not just the physical practices. You can help these persons not only feel better, but also get better. Get better in terms of the reversal of the blockage in the coronary arteries. So, self healing is applicable not only to acute diseases like common cold and diarrhea, self healing is possible also in chronic degenerative diseases such as coronary artery disease and diabetes. So, the person can start moving towards recovery in the real sense. So, the body and the body mechanisms are a two-way street. While an unhealthy lifestyle and mental stress can take us towards disease, reversal of this lifestyle, adopting a more healthy lifestyle, and having mental can help us go towards recovery even from these chronic degenerative conditions. So, self healing mechanisms exist for all types of diseases in the body, and its importance has been realized uh, now in both acute diseases. Of course, it was always realized like common cold, but also in chronic degenerative diseases. Modern medicine has also realized the importance of individualizing the treatment, and the expression of that is the field of pharmacogenetics. Genes are individual, each individual has a different set of genes, and how that can affect the way the drugs work in this person, the type of the dose that the person needs. Now, the importance of understanding the individual has been acknowledged by modern medicine, although pharmacogenetics still is not as well developed as to be able to individualize the treatment for every person. But all the same, the principle has been accepted by modern medicine. Then modern medicine is poised for going beyond mind body medicine. Beyond mind body medicine in the sense that uh, not only do we understand the powers of the patient's mind uh, for working on the patient's body, not only the person can keep the body healthy and recover from disease by using uh, the person using the powers of his own mind, but even a healer or a well-wisher of the person can keep this person healthy, can help this person recover from disease. So it has started going beyond beyond just the mind-body relationship of the individual to the mind of one person influencing the body of another person, which is at the heart of spiritual healing and some systems like Reiki and pranic healing, which broadly come under the different systems of energy medicine or consciousness based medicine. So that's because of all this, because modern medicine has once again uh, shown its ability to be more open to new knowledge, to stretch itself, to stretch the very limits of science itself. This is the time to work for a synthesis. But then why is it not happening fast enough? What are the obstacles to this synthesis? There are obstacles in the form of prejudice for and against. For prejudice for that is faith in scientific medicine, so prejudice against systems, ancient wisdom enshrined in systems such as yoga and Ayurveda. So prejudice for one system and against the other systems is what becomes an obstacle to synthesis. Why this prejudice? There are historical reasons for it. Uh, Look at what the much maligned Macaulay, who worked out the minutes of education for India and revolutionized, in a way, in the negative sense, the education system in India, destroying what we had and replacing it with a system which continues with some modifications even today, but has never been able to strike roots in India because so far removed is that system from the uh, nation soul. But all the same, that system continues. Let's see what this person had in mind when he worked out those minutes, which eventually got incorporated in the type of system of education that the British gave us. The scepter may pass away from us. Scepter, that rod which a king carries as a demonstration of power, the scepter may pass away from us, which means we may not continue to rule India. Unforeseen accidents may derange our most profound schemes of policy. Victory may be inconstant to our arms. He was quite aware that we will not continue to rule India forever. But there are triumphs which are followed by no reverses. The certain types of victory which are permanent, relatively permanent at least. There are no reverses. So we may not continue to rule, but is there something which will continue to persist even beyond our rule? There is an empire exempt from all natural causes of decay. Those triumphs are the pacific triumphs of reason over barbarism. That empire is the imperishable empire of our arts and our morals, our literature and our laws. So they wanted to impose the, the importance that was given to rationality in the Western world after the European Renaissance, that is during the last 400 years or so. The importance that has been given to reason, they wanted to impose that, and they thought that reason is something that can be placed on the highest pedestal because it is such a contrast with barbarism, of which they accused Indians to be. I know Indians are those primitive barbarians, and one of the expressions of that barbarian culture are the Vedas. That is how some of them looked at them. Again, not following the principle of uh, condemning or rejecting something unless you understand it. They did not understand and they condemned. But all the same, they were convinced, people like Macaulay were convinced that reason is superior to barbarism and therefore they can impose reason and thereby help us. And that is the triumph that will have no reversal. These are triumphs, of specific triumphs of reason over barbarism. And what will not perish, that empire which is imperishable, is the empire of arts, morals, literature, and laws. That is, in short, the cultural expressions, the expressions of the Western culture, the British culture particularly. So they wanted to impose their culture on us. And that is why they gave us a certain type of system of education. They may not have succeeded entirely in wiping out our roots. The Indian culture has a survival value, which is truly amazing. They may not have been able to successfully impose all aspects of their culture on us. It's not so easy. But all the same, they did succeed in inculcating in us a sense of inferiority, a sense of feeling embarrassed and ashamed about what is truly Indian, and also some sort of an appreciation and admiration for the Western culture. That they succeeded in doing, and that is what is behind the prejudice that we have for anything that comes from the West and against anything which originated in India. So this is one of the most important obstacles to the synthesis. Now, what can we do about it? What you can do is to work along the same lines, go to our system of education, and this needs a change both in schools and in medical education. What can we do in schools? Inculcate a greater sense of national pride, pride in our own languages, pride in our own culture. And that is something which is not only because we love the country because it happens to be our country. Our country truly has something unique which is of value to the entire world, as the world is realizing gradually more and more. Why? Because forget about the system of medicine that we have, which the entire world can use. We have something more fundamental. We have in our culture a prescription to happiness, a prescription to happiness which is independent of external circumstances, and a prescription which can eventually wipe out misery and suffering from the world by elevating the average level of human consciousness, as Sri Aurobindo and the mother have repeatedly emphasized. India can provide that type of a guidance to the entire world. And that is why the world is looking up to India today for. And therefore, when we try and inculcate a sense of national pride in the children, out of a sense of chauvinism, not just in hollow patriotism. It is we want our own children as they grow up understand what unique features we have. Not only can do us good, they can do good to the entire world. That is something unique to India, and that is why we need to bring this in a bigger way in school education, as has been proposed in the latest education policy, which is still new and uh, probably take time to implement. But then that is the direction in which the new education policy is moving. So we need to work on school education to incorporate that sense of national pride, will take away this prejudice for everything that comes from the West and against everything Indian. And then medical education. Of course, children who grow up in this type of school, go through this type of school education while undergoing medical education, no matter in what system, will also grow, grow up with a different type of attitude to different systems of medicine. They may be studying modern scientific medicine, but they will not have this type of prejudices for and against, which are characteristic today. But there's something more concrete that can be done. Anyone going through uh, education, which is taking him towards becoming a specialist in modern scientific medicine, also should get some exposure to ancient Indian wisdom enshrined in yoga and Ayurveda, sufficient for the person to be an informed and sympathetic critic, not a hostile critic. In the same way, anyone studying a system like Ayurveda or yoga should also study something about modern scientific medicine, so that that person also is an informed critic and not a biased critic, because that type of a bias in favor of the system that the person has studied exists also amongst those who have studied Ayurveda or those who are specialists in yoga. So we need to reform medical education so that no matter what system the person is primarily studying, the person is not totally ignorant about the other systems. What else? What other obstacles do we have to the synthesis? Ignorance. Ignorance of the other systems. Not only the ignorance, but if at least we acknowledge the ignorance, it is one step towards knowledge. There's an unwilling to acknowledge the ignorance. A person, particularly people who have specialized in modern scientific medicine, uh, they are unwilling to acknowledge that there's something worthwhile, something that they need to know, which they still have not learnt in medical school. So that's what makes this ignorance even more pernicious. Not only is there widespread ignorance of the other systems of medicine like Ayurveda among those who have studied modern scientific medicine, they feel that everything worthwhile, in fact, they've already learned because it is a part of modern scientific medicine. The rest is all superstition and outdated, invalid knowledge. So, unwillingness to acknowledge the ignorance makes it worse. And yes, this acknowledgement of ignorance and that the system might have something worthwhile would be one step towards learning something about other systems. Now, related to all this are some other things, a sense of collective ego of the system. All those who have studied allopathy having an ego of their own, and those who have studied Ayurveda having an ego of their own. So, the clash of collective egos of those who have studied different systems. A superiority complex. Both those who have studied modern scientific medicine feel that is superior. Those who have studied Ayurveda feel that that is superior to allopathy. So this type of a superiority complex becomes an obstacle to synthesis. And then, last but not least, health industry. Unfortunately, health has now become an industry. It is no longer something which is a philanthropic sort of activity, an activity which is uh, primarily for service to mankind. It has also become an industry, and of which the pharmaceutical industry is a major component. And since the motive behind industry or business is primarily profit, this also does not promote this type of synthesis, because synthesis of modern medicine with some of the ancient wisdom would, on the whole, not be profitable to the pharmaceutical industry. Now, if the time of synthesis now, is something really happening? Yes, silently the synthesis is going on. It has already begun. And here are some of the very respectable names, and there may be many honorable uh, names that are omitted from this list. But you can see that there's a long list of people like Herbert Benson, who established the Body Mind Institute at Harvard, Deepak Chopra, who has brought into his practice not only uh, Ayurveda but also yoga, along with modern scientific medicine, and who has popularized this in a big way through his paperbacks. And Dean Ornish, who starting with heart disease, has brought it in general into modern scientific medicine and written beautiful books which have this holistic approach like Love and Survival. Bernie Siegel, who brought it first into cancer, but then again has given enough to his popular paperbacks to generalize this approach of synthesis in books such as Peace, Love and Healing, Love, Medicine and Miracles. People like Larry Dossey, who have particularly contributed to bringing uh, prayer, spiritual healing, faith healing, distance healing, and energy medicine uh, closer to modern medicine through books like Peace, Love, and Healing Words, Reinventing Medicine, and so on. Andrew Weil, again, another person who has had a good look at different systems of medicine and tried to work out a synthesis. M.S. Valyathan, uh, a very honorable name in Indian medicine who has worked in India and studied sufficient Ayurveda sufficiently to give us a few good books on Ayurveda. And Bhaswati Bhattacharya, who of course has qualifications in both modern medicine and Ayurveda, and has again written several books, the best known being Everyday Ayurveda, in which she has talked about the daily routine which Ayurveda gives us, how to spend the day from morning till night so that we can be healthier and happier. And each one of them has a degree in modern scientific medicine or allopathy, and some of the best medical schools in the world. And this is an effort along the same lines, which happened at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, AIMS, New Delhi. Uh, on the 3rd of February in the year 2000 was inaugurated the Integral Health Clinic in the Department of Physiology of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And this was a facility which started providing lifestyle modification courses based on yoga in tune with the latest advances in mind body medicine. Here you can see the Dean Dr. Maheshwari inaugurating the Integral Health Clinic on that day. And here are a group of people who were there on the day of the inauguration. People like Dr. Subhash Manchanda, cardiologist, the head of the cardiology department then in the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and Dr. Rastogi from the Department of Psychiatry in Safdarjung Hospital, Dr. Selvamurthy, the director of the Defense Institute of Physiology and Allied Sciences, and so on. So you can see Swami Dharmanand from the Adhyatma Sadhana Kendra. So we have a collection of different types of people from different directions who came for this inauguration of the Integral Health Clinic at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, AIMS, New Delhi, 23 years ago. So this was a type of a synthesis. You can call it a type of a marriage of modern medicine with the ancient systems, such as ancient wisdom enshrined in yoga. But all the same, one can't call it settled because the approach has not still become mainstream. It still remains on the fringes. But all the same, the encouraging part is, the positive part is synthesis is going on. And now there are email and WhatsApp groups such as Amazonians for Ayurveda and Scientists for Ayurveda. And why should we work out this synthesis? Is it just an intellectual pastime? Is it because we want to demonstrate our open minds, our minds which are willing for a synthesis? Or is there something more practical, something more utilitarian about it? It can be all these, but then it's something which is for the general welfare of mankind. for promoting health in the human race, preventing disease, providing more effective treatment, reducing the cost of healthcare, because once you incorporate ancient wisdom into modern scientific medicine, the cost comes down enormously. Bypass surgery costs a lot more than helping a person reverse coronary artery disease through a holistic approach, through lifestyle modification based on yoga. And this treatment, in India at least, is also a more culturally compatible treatment than treatment with modern scientific medicine. Even if there are some discouraging features in these attempts at synthesis, this should not discourage us because Sri Aurobindo has said failures must be originally numerous in everything great and difficult. But the time comes when the experience of past failures can be profitably used and the gate that so long resisted opens. So even if we are not as successful as we would like to be, the failure itself can teach us something so that we can move towards a better, more powerful synthesis, a synthesis which becomes mainstream. One might also generalize to say that one can have a contrast between a synthesis and an analytic approach. Both have their value in life. But in general, it has been seen that the greater minds have a greater capacity for synthesis than analysis. They have a greater inclination to synthesize than analyze. Sri Aurobindo, a great intellectual apart from being a spiritual master, was capable of not only working out a wonderful and powerful synthesis, he was extremely analytic also. The intellect can be used for both, but synthesis is on the whole a more difficult and a more advanced type of intellectual activity than analysis. And therefore, the greatest of minds always show great inclination towards synthesis. And in the same way, the holistic approach versus the reductionist approach. The reductionist approach may be the hallmark of modern science, but all the same, realizing its limitations, there's always a tendency amongst the best of minds, even in modern science, to once again look at the thing from a distance in a holistic manner. I brought this picture here. It's a picture from Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch again. This is not Auroville. This is a model of what you see in Auroville as the Matri Mandira. Uh, particularly because of this tree. One can mistake a tree for a forest, or one can get busy counting the number of leaves in the tree. These are the different types of approaches, uh, mistaking a tree for a forest or counting the number of leaves in the tree. These are the types of approaches which would be analytic or reductionist. Whereas looking at the forest as a whole from a distance, focusing on the ripe fruit in the tree rather than counting the leaves in the tree would be more like synthesis and holism. So the choice is ours, whether to get busy with infructuous activities, just as counting the number of leaves in the tree, or to enjoy the fruit that the tree can give us. Here's some suggested reading. The Veda of the Body by Dr. Alok Pandey. Patient at the Crossroads by Dr. Alok Pandey. Back to Health Through Yoga by yours truly. Uh, Love and Survival by Dean Ornish. Love Medicine and Miracles by Bernie Siegel. Reinventing Medicine by Larry Dossey. It's a small selection, many more along the same lines available today. This is a picture postcard view of the Sri Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch from where I'm speaking. And post COVID, now our activities are back, and you're all welcome here. Any questions or comments are welcome, for which you can ask now or drop an email to yes@yesspirituality.com. Gratitude to the Mother and Sri Aurobindo for making these sessions possible. Thank you all for being there.
Thank you, everyone. Minute of silence and we close.